go ahead and get started. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the first talk in our public series this week called Preserving Cultural Heritage, Global Strategies and Perspectives. My name is Charlotte Ashamu, and I serve as the Director of International Programs at Yale's Institute for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage, known as IPCH. This week, we have the privilege of hosting an extraordinary group of global leaders who are reimagining and transforming museums, libraries, and cultural institutions around the world. These conversations are part of our commitment at IPCH to advancing the preservation and care of cultural heritage through knowledge exchange, professional development, and collaboration. This afternoon, we are honored to begin a conversation on the transformation of public libraries in Kenya, featuring Wanjiru Koinange, co-founder of Book Bunk and a fellow of the Yale Directors Forum. And as many of you know, the Yale Directors Forum is a global fellowship program here at Yale, which is designed to support and connect leaders in the cultural heritage sector. Our inaugural cohort includes 16 outstanding leaders from 11 African countries, each of whom is doing remarkable work to safeguard and revitalize cultural institutions in their communities. Wanjiru and her team at Book Bunk are at the forefront of this effort, working to restore and reimagine Kenya's historic public libraries. Through her leadership, Book Bunk is not only preserving architectural heritage, but also redefining the role of libraries as dynamic spaces for storytelling, creativity, and knowledge sharing. We are so delighted to have Wanjiru here today, and she's going to share her insights and experiences with us in an exciting conversation. Before I begin, I'd like to invite my dear colleague, Sandra Aya Enino, who is the Program Director for Scholarly Communication and Information Policy at the Yale University Library, to formally introduce our distinguished speaker. Sandra, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Welcome to Yale Library. For those of you who've not been here before, definitely welcome to our distinguished guests, the fellows, and thank you to our speaker today. Wanjiru Koinange is the co-founder of the Book Bunk, which she established with Angela Wachuku in 2017. The Book Bunk is an independent nonprofit organization that renovates and manages some of Nairobi's iconic public libraries. Wanjiru is a writer and entrepreneur from Nairobi, Kenya. Her debut novel, The Havoc of Choice, was a national bestseller from 2020 to 2022 in both Kenya and the UK. The novel chronicles events surrounding Kenya's 2007 general election and has been described as one of the best accounts of the new Africa in years. Wanjiru's writing has been published in several journals and magazines across the African continent, including the Commonwealth Writers, where she served as cultural correspondent for East and Southern Africa in 2015. She received a BA in journalism and literature from Nairobi's United States International University and her MA in creative writing from the University of Cape Town. I'm going to invite Wanjiru up here to come and talk about the historic libraries that she is working on in Nairobi, Kenya, as we sit in this historic library here with similar kind of colonial legacy and colonial past, especially around who accesses these libraries, and want to hear about how Wanjiru is changing that. Wanjiru.
Thank you, Sandra. And thank you, Charlotte and Michaela, and to this incredible space for playing host today. Fun fact before I start, so this library and the one I'll be spending a lot of this talking about were established in the same year, 1931. And I do not believe in coincidences, so I think that's the reason I'm here today. Thank you for coming. I'll get right started. That's me. You've heard all about me quite eloquently, but those are the covers of my precious book. I'm working hard on the second one. As you've heard, Book Bunk was established by my co-founder and I in 2017. And a few years before that, we walked into the building you see now, which was construction began in 1929. In 1931, it was open. And it was built by Lady Lucy Macmillan in memory of her husband, who was an American explorer, railroad millionaire, who came to Kenya and never left. And when he passed away, his wife created this building in his honor. However, for the first 30 or so years of this building's life, Kenyans were not allowed in there. So it was built exclusively for the use of the British colonial settlers. And that changed in 1958. On the lead up to Kenya's independence, the government told Lady Lucy, listen, if you're gonna give us this library, we're gonna need to use it, right? So that's when the law changed, and my grandparents could then walk into this building, and that's been the case until 2010, when two women walked into a library, young, their hairline still intact, very enthusiastic about the thing we could do in this library. On this day, this is a screenshot taken, by the way, from a documentary that's now doing the festival circuit. It's called How to Build a Library, and it tells the story of the last 7 years of this work. You get to hear it exclusively from me, but we'd love to be able to screen that film here when it comes. So this photograph was taken all those years ago. We walked in there looking for a venue for a literature festival. And the one thing I remember starkly about the Macmillan on that day was a huge stack of chairs, stacked all the way to the ceiling of the children's section, among other like broken furniture that was just kind of taking up space in the library, and therefore it wasn't being used for its intended purpose. We walked away that day. We didn't use it for that festival, but I think that's the day the seed was planted, because as a writer and a publisher, my co-founder is a publisher, we kept asking ourselves, what does this mean for Kenyans to have our intellectual knowledge sit in a rotting building? What are we saying about the places where our stories go to live and how we preserve them? I'll take us back. So then we set up Book Bunk in 2017, and the whole core of the business is to set, well, non-profit is to restore public libraries, and to not only restore the buildings, as Charlotte has said, but to change what the buildings mean for Nairobi today. And the first thing we did when we took over the building was have a bunch of events. We asked the public, what do you want to do? What do you need space to do? And in 2019, which is the first year that we kind of had these interventions, we had 23 events that the public came and told us, we just need a space to do something. You can give us a little bit of money, will help as well. So we gave each of these events about $2,000 worth of event support and the space to use for their event. And that meant that we had new people coming into the library that had never been there before, and we could ask them, what do you want this space to do with you? It took us about a year to kind of design this research process, to get the money to fund it and to have these events. But by the end of 2019, we had over 1,500 people tell us what they would need, not just this space, but all the other spaces that we adopted to do for them. And that was the beginning of kind of our design process. And then in 2020, in the height of the pandemic, we restored our first library. Now, this is obviously not in Macmillan. Macmillan has 5 branches across the city. At the point when we were taking them over, 2 of them had been shut down and 3 remained. Kaloleni is, I guess, the juxtaposition to Macmillan, because this is a really special children's library that's attached to a larger social hall that is kind of the foundation of Kenya's independence. A lot of our founding papers, our constitutions, were written in this hall before we had our formal parliament. So for us, it was obvious that we had to take over this building because it's very small, and it gave us a very easy, accessible way to prove our concept, to show the world this is what we're trying to do with libraries. So over 6 weeks in the pandemic, we restored the building to what it looks like today. And then a few months later, we did our second one, because we just like to move quick. Eastland's library is much bigger than Kaloleni. This one probably had more foot traffic than all the 3 in our network. This one had about 200 people every day using it in its pre-renovated state. People were coming to use it for the space, not so much for the collection, but for the space. And with their feedback, people told us they wanted spaces to dance, to nurse their children, to play Lego. So we made both of these spaces into what we call palaces for the people. And now they're 2 of the most popular libraries in Nairobi, and we're really proud to have increased the foot traffic by over 200% in just 2.5 years. So imagine what we can do with more time. And then in 2023, after running these spaces, we really sat back and we thought about, okay, we know what we're doing. We've obviously proven our concept. We know that we know how to respond to the needs of our communities faster than most schools can, the most governments can, because that's what libraries do, that's what our libraries do. We exist in service of our communities, and we call ourselves solution centers, places where people can come and get solutions to the things that are pressing them at that moment. If we don't have a book for it, we probably have a film for it, or a song about it, or a podcast, or a person who's experienced it. And we try as fast as possible to connect people with all of the things that they need. We digitize collections. We have music classes for children, dance classes, art classes. We have what is quickly becoming one of Nairobi's biggest literature festivals happening within these 3 libraries. And that's why our growth has been so fast and so impactful. And this is a kind of snapshot. So as I mentioned, between 2019, when we started the construction, and today, 243% increase in patronage. All of our programs for children, we realized that if you have kids come to the library and you're supposed to have them there engaged for 4 hours, a lot of the time kids would leave at lunchtime because they were hungry, or just stay for the program but wouldn't pay attention. So we added meals to our children's programs, and the numbers just went up. We had kids coming back because we're solving a problem not just for them, but for their mothers at home. It was one less meal for their mothers at home to have to think about. So far, 181,000, that's probably grown, because it grows every day. But at the end of last year, we had over 180,000 people walking to these spaces. And this is kind of the thing that I think will resonate the most with this room, the collection. So Macmillan is a 90-year-old building, and the collection reflects the age. And what happened since 1931, there hasn't been a concerted effort to actually update the collection. So when you walk in there, even today, you're walking into a 1931 time capsule of Nairobi, including the collection. So the first thing we did with that collection is catalog it, because there wasn't any digital record of what was in there. There was a bunch of cabinets with those cards, with those old library cards. That's what they still have to date. So we hired 9 interns, paid them for 9 months, and we told them you need to sticker and catalog every single thing in this library. Once that was done, we had a record of what was there. Then we're like, okay, what is the most damaged? What needs repair the fastest? And then began to repair and digitize that collection. And this number has since grown as well. We're probably talking 400,000 now, and these are items that are digitized, that don't exist anywhere else, according to our kind of research, and are publicly accessible to the public everywhere and for free. So we've been busy, but the question is, what about this building, right? This is what started it. It still looks like that today. We have 2 proof of concepts. We know that Nairobi loves libraries. We know Nairobi likes to do many things in their libraries. And so we're kind of turning attention back to this building and trying to raise the money to actually work on the architectural piece of this building. And I like to show this picture because it gives you a sense if you haven't been to Nairobi. And I should pause here and ask how many people have actually been to Nairobi. Okay. When? So Nairobi is a bustling African city, and this library is kind of in the center of it. And my favorite thing about it, it has a very big and loud mosque next to it and behind it, and the city happening all around it. But somehow when you walk into that library, it's like this den of silence. I don't know, it's not even soundproof, but somehow something about that building, the way it was created, just makes it feel like a bit of an oasis of knowledge. And I think this picture, well, this set of pictures do a beautiful job at just capturing that. So just a sense of our city in this one. And that's the state of the building. So it needs a lot of love. Those chairs I mentioned in the beginning, we just keep moving them around. That's because we need them, but they're so ugly. And constantly, what we do now at Book Bunk is, because we need to raise all this money to repair the building, we just currently try and stop any further damage. So we're always just trying to arrest any further damage. We have a lot of floods happening in the city now. What you're looking at now is a picture of the roof, at least those first 3. The collection has seen better days. This is what it looked like when we found it. And this is the first floor of the library. So this is probably the room, the one right here, the room with the rarest collections. We have first editions, we have books that we know we have 1 of 12 copies in the world. And when we found the newspaper collection, which is the biggest, I dare say, in the country and the most rare, it was all sitting on the top floor. We're talking about maybe 1,000 really giant bound volumes, maybe even more. And our architects were just like, get those things out of there, because you don't know if the top floor can bear the weight. So we moved them to the basement, which floods all the time. And this is a picture of the collection in the basement. So we're constantly trying to save this collection, despite the fact that we haven't done the building yet. But while we're saving it, we're saving the physical collections, but also digitizing them, as I mentioned, so that we can at least preserve the information on there. And this is how we do it. We hire interns. We like to work with young people because they work fast and they're very, very innovative. And the same interns who cataloged the collection in 2019 then came back to begin to figure out a way to digitize this collection. So we started with what is best practice in digitization. And best practice often means millions of shillings in scanners, in expertise, in equipment, which we just did not have. So we kind of went around to as many libraries as we could globally, trying to figure out what is the way we can kind of DIY this to make it fit for purpose, and that's what you're seeing now. We rather bought these cameras and this, what are these things, the lights, and kind of found a way that worked for us to digitize this collection, and we could do so quickly, cost effectively, while matching international standards of quality, and we've done that for over 350,000 items. We also collect public stories, because we realized that similar to the library, which was not intended for us, the collection was also not intended for us. So if you keep on digitizing a collection that wasn't intended for you, you're repeating the same problem. And that was the reason why we launched The Missing Bits, and we spoke a lot about this today in this library. The Missing Bits is a public crowdsourcing archival project. Every year we have a theme, and we tell the public, if you have a story, a photograph, a letter, a map, anything in your home, that speaks to this theme, please bring it to the library. We will digitize it for you. We'll give you a digital copy, and we will add this piece of information onto the public archive. And now, therefore, we begin to get a fuller, richer version of what history looked like. My favorite theme was Kenya in the 1960s, which is when we got independence. So we had all of these really popular narratives about the energy in the country around independence, the struggle, the Mau, all of this. But I had no idea what people were doing if they weren't on the front line, right? So for a year, we went around and asked people, please bring your parents to the library. We want to ask them about 12th of December, 1963, where were you? That was the only question we asked, and the stories were so beautiful. My mom was in the hair salon getting her hair done. People just didn't even know. People didn't know that we were getting independence, because it wasn't like now when news travels quickly. People take 2 or 3 weeks for everyone to know, oh, we're no longer a colony. Okay, that's interesting. It's just the kind of thing you would never see covered in newspapers. And that's the thing about libraries and the thing that collections do, because they show you your history, but also show you your gaps, your missing bits. And this is probably one of our favorite archival projects. Every year we have a new theme, and every year we try and present something, or give the community something, offer them something so that they can also respond. So this year of 1963, we had an exhibition around the 60s, everything from life and art and politics. And then that kind of got people thinking about where they were. Last year, we had a really powerful film about loss, and we screened that film and then had people share their stories about loss, because it was a difficult year for Kenya last year. We had more protests than we've ever had, and people had lost things. They'd lost hope in their country, they'd lost jobs, they'd lost loved ones. It was a really powerful year to speak about loss, and that this is the power of archiving as well, because you're able to capture the moments as they're happening, you're able to have people bring in pieces of their history and then create a really beautiful collective history. And that's The Missing Bits. And these are pictures from some of our kind of crowdsourcing events. Then we've also had some incredible support from this wonderful institution, the Yale Institute for Preservation of Cultural Heritage. We had Anupam come and visit us last year, look through our collections, look through the collections on the shelves, and just train our team on how to preserve them with what we have now before we get the money we need to do everything. What can we do now to begin to just reduce the rate of degradation for all of this materials? And my favorite thing about this particular workshop is how practical it was, when learning how to make starch, learning how to even flip the spines of the books depending on where the light was hitting. It was just more than I ever could have imagined. When we're constantly trying to make sure that wherever we're learning, we're also sharing with the community, because these archives live in our homes as well. And we do that through a bunch of materials where we put out materials to help you digitize your own collections at home. We just need a cell phone, a table, and maybe a black cloth. And we have this that exists as manuals, but also as YouTube videos. We also ask them how to protect their personal archives at home. Sometimes something as simple as putting a plant in your room can really do a lot for your personal archives. And also how to reduce your carbon footprint, because we can save our archives all we want, but if we're not dealing with a major problem, then it's all kind of in vain. And we also do so for children, because I keep saying when you're design for kids first, and the adults will follow. So these videos currently exist online, and we have them being used in schools for kids to go to the libraries and learn how to digitize their own collections in their schools. Now, we've done a lot, because we like to do many things, and we're picking on this mission now, because we've done all this work, we've gathered all of this intel. We've so far reached about 200,000 people, and we want to see if we can reach 1 million people by 2027, and that ambitious goal requires us to restore the Macmillan because it is our flagship project. It is in the center of the city. It's the one everybody wants to come to. So we're hoping that this new kind of revived mission can help us get the resources together to do this building. And then what? So, and I'm wrapping up soon, I hope I'm good on time. We, between the years of 2020 and 2023, visited every single library in Nairobi, Kenya, actually. And Kenya has the most number of libraries of any other African country. According to IFLA, we have 49,000 libraries. Many of these exist in schools, in colleges, in police stations, which is, for me, such an interesting thing. But a lot of them are public libraries. So we've gone to all of them. We know what they need. We know who owns them. We know who resources them. We know how to scale, and we want to because we're building palaces for the people, and we think that every single person somewhere has a need, and they shouldn't have to pay for it. They shouldn't have to know someone. They shouldn't have to do all of the things you have to do in Kenya to navigate the needs that you have, because information can unlock everything. So this library ecosystem research has also now been done for the archives in Nairobi, and we'll be launching this report in June this year. And we're raising about $5 million to help us scale. We have 3 libraries now. We want to scale to 4 and then hit all of provinces, which will give us about 12 in total. And then we're ready to take on the world, because while libraries all over the world are being shut down, we can show the world how to reopen them with new life, and to just really make sure that you can protect them with the community, because in our cases, the community are such defenders of our work. So if anyone ever tries to take those libraries away from them, we don't even have to do anything. They will fight that battle. I think it's important for everybody to have a space that they feel that passionate about. How to find us? Apologize for the weird formatting. So that's our website. We are always trying to find new ways to share our work that are not long, lengthy reports that no one ever reads. So we have a podcast. It's called A Palace for the People. It's inspired by a book called Palaces for the People that's written by Eric Koinange. And it's 2 seasons out. Season 3 is coming out this year in May. And that's where we are, social everywhere. And that's the story of Book Bunk. I hope that you have found something inspiring, and I'm happy to take some questions and to have this wonderful conversation with Sandra now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
You answered like a number of my questions, so
Great.
let's skip up those. But yeah, thank you so much for letting us know about the Book Bunk. I have been to the Macmillan. I was mentioning this earlier to Wanjiru. I've been there before. My partner is from Kenya, and so he knows that if I go to a city, take me to a library, take me to a main library. And because there wasn't one, he was like, well, I'll take you to the Macmillan, but just so you know, it looks crazy inside. And I was like, okay. And I went, but it's stunning, even though, you know, there's a lot going on. And, you know, but it's still, there were people inside who were studying, who were doing different things and just relaxing, even though things were just kind of looking like mayhem around them, but they were in there, in the space. Because when we walked up, I was like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, let's go inside. And apparently he studied there when he was, he went to Nairobi University before he went to go, he studied there, and him and his friends would go there. So.
It's very popular, the students from UN, it's right up behind it, so it's quite popular.
So one of the questions, and I wanted to also say, please do listen to the Palace for People. I listen, you and Angela's voices are very soothing as you're talking about the library, so highly recommend. So for the Macmillan though, you said in 2010, that was the first time that you or Angela had been?
Yeah, could you believe it? Because it's been there forever. But even when you went, I'm sure there was a black gate that you kind of had to like scooch under, and that gate really keeps people out, so it's never been closed. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mic is working, okay. So the library has never really been closed to the public. It's been open every single day. The only time it was closed was during COVID. But outside of that, it's been open to the public. And I walked past it every single day on my way to undergrad when I was in university. I'd walk past it to go and catch my bus, and I just never thought to walk in. And that is true for so many Kenyans, because nothing about that building today says, come, you're welcome, it's yours. It says stay out. Mm-hmm. You will get into trouble across this black gate. One of the first things I want to do is get rid of that gate and put some kind of greenery around it, because it's not the most welcoming space, even if it's a public library.
So I think, yes, one of the ways probably to help people know I can also come into this space would be getting rid of that. But I think also what you were talking about with doing programming to try to attract people, was that any of that happening in that space, or was that in the other libraries?
Yeah, so everything we do in all three, mostly because the demographics are so different. The CBD one, the Macmillan, the center of the Central Business District, everybody uses it because it's a bit of a cosmopolitan space. Colonial is used exclusively by children because it's right next to a kindergarten and the social hall I referenced. And Eastlands is mostly young adults, anywhere between, maybe, let's say from 3 to 23, the main use. So we don't do the same thing like any libraries, so we have to do everything everywhere. For Macmillan, we tend to use it mostly for fundraising events, because it lends itself so well to like fancy galas, which we like to do. November, first Saturday every year, come.
Yeah, I've got to try to negotiate for a November trip to.
Yeah. Charlotte can help out.
Charlotte? Okay. So one of the things that you have the tagline, "We build libraries." You have the documentary out, how to build a library. And so I was thinking initially that a lot of your work was more about the architecture, some of the programming, but more about the architecture of the space and how to draw people into it. But it sounds like you're doing more than just restoration with the digitization project. Are you also involved with acquisitions, new acquisitions, cataloging, all of those things too?
Every single thing, and that is maybe testament to how naive we were, even when we were picking our tagline. Because even with the Macmillan, we thought we would walk in and the first thing we do would be the architecture. We're like, we're gonna knock down those, you should have seen us making plans, we're gonna have a rooftop cafe and do all of these things. And then the more we made these plans and the more we got experts in, we're like, okay, we have no idea what we're doing here. But we then began to think about all the ways you can build a library. And we don't even build libraries because we have so many. So we don't need to build new buildings. We just need to restore them and then program them. So while we do say we build libraries, it's more like we create libraries. We create new ideas of what libraries can do. We restore them, we revigorate them, we transform them, which I think is the most appropriate word. But the architecture has honestly become the least important piece. The most expensive, but probably the least important, because people were still using them even when they looked the way they did. What we've done is given the spaces dignity, and therefore when you come, you feel like as a result, you're also treated in a dignified manner. And that's one of the things that I keep telling our team, that we're here to peddle dignity to people who often are only spoken to every 5 years when the election cycle is coming. People come and give them all of these promises, then go away. And that was one of my most favorite feedback, that some of the people who came to the library before we restored them, when they came in and saw the brand new, shiny, clean library, they were just like, oh, this must be not for me anymore. And we're like, no, come. I remember you saying you wanted a stage, go and see your stage, if you want it, reuse it, go and make sure that there's someone on that stage performing every single day. And that's why we're learning that the transformation of the building is a result of the programs, of the collections, of everything else, because then you design for what people tell you they want programmatically, and if you start with the building, you're making assumptions about what people want. So we've learned to do that last, and even as we're expanding, we won't touch your project unless you let us do at least 6 months of talking to the community who are going to use it, because otherwise we're fulfilling our own desires and not the community's desires.
Yeah, well, that's great. The other question I was going to ask was definitely going to be about the community, but the community within the library, the librarians, library staff, and how do they respond when you're...
Have you watched the film already? So I love librarians, and I'm speaking inside the library, so I have to be careful.
We've heard it all. So.
Yeah. So there's a complete, you can change everything, and this is the case of, I guess, our libraries. You can change everything apart from how those books are catalogued. They're like, don't change the order of the books on the shelf. And I pretend I have a big problem with that, because, for instance, the Dewey Decimal System is very racist. So it has a code for every single language of the world. But then all 2,000 of African countries are given one code. And I'm like, what are we doing? And this is fine for it to be what was happening in 1890, but then when are we updating things? So I, for instance, and I lost this battle, but I said there's no way we're using Dewey Decimal in the library that I'm restoring. I'm like, we're not going to continue this madness. But the librarians are just like, no, we're not doing it. So we built this new categorization system, which I think really is it's not better than what exists before. It builds on what exists, and then it also just makes the system easy. It makes it easy for a child to walk into the library and see, books about the environment and not a code, which is what was there before. And that's been the biggest pain point. We lost that battle. We gave them, now we used to do it as small, and you win some and you lose some. But I think that the conversation we had with the librarians, and not just the ones in our library, but across Kenya around what are you saying when you choose to do certain things? I'll give an example. In Kenya, we're still required to put English names first on our birth certificates. I'm like, what are we saying when we're putting English names first or not? I have 2 very functional non-English names. Why can't those kind of be put first? And that's the thing that we try and continue to push for. But outside of the classification system, everything else has been a walk in the park. I think that the libraries were completely underutilized, and we've been able to give them new life. And the response to that has been great, as long as we don't mess with the stickers on the books.
So, I mean, I know that there's been definitely a lot of challenges. I'm not going to ask you about any of the working with the government, because I think we can all probably assume that was like super fun, right?
Love it.
But I am definitely interested in working in a space that a building that was established in the mid 20th century, but an institution that's colonial and part of a colonial legacy. To look at the Macmillan, to look at these other spaces, as you mentioned, that weren't built for you, and try to create something that you're building that is for Kenyans to appreciate. Why did you want to take that on?
That's a question I ask myself every day now. Because I think that if you don't stare things in the face, then they have a way of blindsiding you. And I think in Kenya we've done a really good job at censoring what's taught in school about our colonial period and what happened even after. And not just with that, with everything that happens to us that's painful in any way. But like, let's just throw a rug over it and keep on moving. And the national rug in Kenya is big. We need to burn it, right? It's like we just keep throwing things under it. And I think that's why, because I would want to get rid of the books that are hurtful to me. And that again was the first thing we thought we'd get in there, and all of those sculptures, all of those pictures that we don't know who these people are, would get rid of them and replace them with African children having glorious fun in the Sahara. But it felt like you're erasing something because it's painful, and instead of staring at it, so we opted to stare at it, because then we can figure out how we can see it coming if it ever comes again. And it's also that when we were cataloging the books in 2018, we hired interns. The average age was maybe 23, and a lot of them just didn't understand the breadth of colonization, because it's not taught in school as it should. It's really, really watered down. And if you ever come to Nairobi, please book a library tour, and we'd love to show the Africana room, because it just shows you the titles of some of those books are so offensive. And these young people who had really had this watered down version of their history were then encountering them as postgrads or as undergraduates, and asking themselves, why weren't we taught this? Why was this? Like, is this what they really thought about us? We had to hire counselors to work with our digitization teams, just because of the material they were going through, and that's why it's important, because I think that there's so much you can do with information. There's so many ways you can move more eloquently in the world, and I'm a storyteller. And I think all stories need to be told as adequately and as truthfully as they can, and you can't do that if you've erased the things that hurt. So on a personal front, I think that pain is the most, for me, pain, sadness, that's the emotion I pay attention to the most. It's very easy for me to glaze over anger and happiness, but when I'm sad or in pain, I pay attention, because it's probably something that needs to be resolved. And I think we could do a much better job, as Kenyans especially, at staring at our pain a bit more.
Thank you, Wanjiru. I want to open it up for questions from the audience.
You have a microphone.
Thank you so much. Join.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's off. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much. I never visit Nairobi, Kenya, I did not raise my hand, but I hope to raise my hand after May, because I will probably visit the library. I would like to know, because I'm a university museum, and all my relationship with the institution, I am aware about how you deal with scholar and university in your library, because you talk about many things, but you did not talk about the relationship with, scholar, students, and university. What is the kind of collaboration you do?
It's a great question. So far, and there's lots more we could do, but so far what we're doing now is all the interns we hire, we get them from local universities, and we hire anywhere between 15 and 60 interns a year, depending on what projects we have. When we have archival projects, that number even shoots up because we have to do so much so quickly. There have been a few students who research projects on Book Bunk, but we're definitely sure we can do a lot more. One of my dreams is to have some kind of archival fellowship where we can have students come into the basement of the Macmillan, look through that collection, and every year design some kind of exhibition that we can put on at our gala. We do it internally because we're trying to test the concept, but that's something that should be an academic process or an artistic process, to be honest, a kind of curatorial process. But currently our engagement with university kind of stops at skills, its capacity, just giving internships. When we need volunteers for our festival, we go back to universities. And also for benchmarking, to be honest, because a lot of the things we're doing right now, we're having to acquire for the first part, like library systems and all of these things. So we go benchmark with local universities first to see what they're doing, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But there's lots more we can do.
Hi, I don't know if it's on. I'll just talk loudly. I'm told I'm good at that. Just by the way, the first time I went to Kenya in 2021, I booked a tour through Airbnb for the library, and I've gone back a couple of times since then. And so I guess just like random question in my mind is, I know about the linguistic diversity in Kenya, so obviously the top two languages would be Swahili and English, but I'm just wondering, are there aspects to your collection that, well, first of all, kind of like what's the balance between Swahili and English, and are there parts of the collection that even involve other languages, Kikuyu, Luo, etc., including like some of the oral histories? I'm kind of curious.
So yes, for the oral history, so we collect those histories in whatever way they're presented to us. So when we have the Missing Bits project running, we'll hire interviewers who can speak as many popular Kenyan languages as we can find. And English actually is number 11 on our list of, if you're in Nairobi, you think all Kenyans speak English, but it's actually the 11th most spoken language after Somali and Gujarati. It was shocking even to me. But we don't have any physical or kind of collections in local languages because there's not much publishing happening in those languages, unfortunately. But the audio story, the kind of crowdsourcing projects we have, those, if you're speaking in Luo, we will take it in Luo. We often have translations into English or Kiswahili. But this book has also taught us a lot about language. Sheng is very highly spoken in Kenya, and it's probably third on the list of spoken languages. Sheng is what's the
Pidgin.
yeah, it's like pidgin. It's our pidgin. The word that I'm forgetting. Yeah, but it's not a written language. So we had this thing where we had all of these surveys and we translated them into English, Swahili, and Sheng. And the Sheng one's bombed because people don't read Sheng, they speak it. But when you put it to a page, it just doesn't work. So we're learning a lot about the way language works as well. But yeah, it would be great to have a more diverse set of languages. And fun fact is that in the 1930s and 40s, the largest Africana collection was in Macmillan. Now it's here in the US. And I personally want to take it back. Go back to Africa, and maybe the Macmillan could be the home for it again. We spoke a lot about the size of the collection here, which is massively impressive. But it'd be great to have that collection sit on the continent.
You know, something I think about too with a colonial legacy is what languages things are published in.
Yeah.
In Commonwealth countries or any country that was under colonialism, that what was published was English.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or French, or,
French,
you know,
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. This was so inspiring and affirming of like all my dreams. I wanted to ask, when you were starting and up till now, what would you say are the enabling factors that allow this to happen? Like what partnerships, you made it clear that community definitely helped you. But like on institutional wise, what types of partnerships brought you here? And my second question is, when you're also thinking about this as an idea, in what ways did you have to sometimes like prove yourself or like run experiments to convince people that this was going to work?
Those are some great questions. So as much as you mentioned that the government owns the three spaces we currently work with, and I don't think, I mean, we all know that it's not a walk in the park dealing with government. It's probably what I spend most of my time doing, dreadfully. But it's also our most important partnership. Those buildings wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the government, and even if, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the government. So in that sense, that they're our most important one. And even that we were able to get a partnership, we bullied them for 2 years to give us this partnership, by the way. My co-founder and I, we both go out to dinner and we have the paperwork in our bags, just kind of being like, maybe they're gonna call today for us to sign this, be ready. We're always ready. We had those paper, that contract in our handbag all the time. We wrote it ourselves. There was no precedent for this kind of work that happened in Nairobi. The government was not signing contracts with cultural institutions at the time because it had never happened before. So everything that has happened was something that we had to make up. But the government has been our most kind of important ally, as well as partnerships such as the one we have with Yale and the Institute, because you don't always, money is great, but if you don't know what to do with it, then it's quite pointless. And sometimes we've learned that starting with the questions, with the community, with artists have really helped us shape this project. The funders are great, but I think at some point you just, like, it really boils down to the community and what, because they're also kind of core to the work. We've also been very intentional about where we place this work. So we have a gala every year. That's very glamorous. Every year we increase the ticket price. Every year we sell out. We're like, we're gonna keep paying for this party. And I love that because we didn't want to come from a point where we're kind of guilting people of being like a pretty party. Look at Africa, this old library is so sad. We're like, let's restore the glamour to libraries. Libraries you should be dying to enter a library. You should be proud to walk into a space. So we try to be very shiny and glamorous in the way that we speak about this work because we think that the spaces deserve it. And I think that has led to a lot of media attention. That has also helped us to spread our story. I don't think there's a media outlet in any major one that hasn't covered Book Bunk. We got visited by the King of England last year because we're super visible, but this also wouldn't be happening if the work wasn't doing the thing. So I think that the commitment to community first is the reason why we've had so much work done so quickly, and that we've got all of these wonderful partners to kind of see us, to reach out to us. Yeah, and I think there's so much more we can do, and I'm always saying yes to places where we can go and meet new people and just see what new inspiring ideas we can learn from in Ghana.
You said there were how many libraries in Kenya?
49,172.
And some of them are in police stations.
Yeah, every single police station has a library. I was like, and we can access it. I'm like, what are you keeping it there? All the breaks you take. I'm like, what's happening? But yeah, police station.
So almost 50,000 libraries in Kenya.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm curious to ask, what your customers and clients, how many of them are asking to see books digitally rather than the physical book?
That's a great question. I would say 80% are asking for physical books. 80% ask for physical books and about 20% for digital books. I think it's because, I don't know, there's this article I read two years ago about Gen Zs going back to the book because they're having screen fatigue, and I think that's happening across generations. We still don't have a fully functional lending library because of some problems with the partnership with the government and who owns the lending library, because we don't want the government controlling it, because then censorship and all of these things come into play. We want to be the ones creating the collection, and that's why we haven't really launched the lending libraries. Right now, we're a reference library for all three of them at the moment, but that's probably our most popular request, that people can take the books home. But we have almost people who want the archival material are mostly researchers, academics, but most people coming from outside the country who want to access some part of Kenya's history. But our everyday people walking into the space want to access the physical collections. That's what they come for. Programs being second to that. And Wi-Fi. Oh my God, the Wi-Fi is very popular.
Yeah.
But 20% is significant.
Sorry? Yeah. Yep.
Are the digital books available, I mean, or the what you digitize, is that available openly online, or people have to come inside?
That's available online.
Hey, my name is Tony. I haven't grown up in Kenya, but this is actually really cool. We have a project here. And I'd like to ask, what kind of factors do you consider when choosing like the next library to renovate? And another thing is, like I grew up in Nairobi, so like we have to walk all the way to like Wood to like use the library, and I'd love to know what the Islam's library is.
Oh, so do you know what the Huduma Center, Makadara?
Yeah.
Same compound.
Okay.
So everybody knows the Huduma Center, but very people know there's a library in there. And so that's where it is. And please come when you're next home. We'd love to show you around. So that's the question we're asking ourselves every day, how to pick. One of the hardest parts of this work is trying to convince people that they deserve nice things. Because we know we deserve nice things. We know Kenyans deserve nice things. A lot of our funders know people that they deserve nice things, but sometimes when you go to a community and tell them, oh, want to restore your library, they're like, huh? So just instead give us like a shop or a school where we can learn some skill, because they're thinking about a room with old books that no one's opening. But then when we tell them, okay, here's some pictures, watch this video about what we're doing in our library, then you get to have a bit more of a kind of a warm reception to it. So I think the short answer to your question is we're going to go where we're wanted. We're going to go where we're wanted, where we're needed. I'm not keen, this is a personal position, I'm not keen on building new libraries when we have 59,000 existing. Nairobi doesn't need any new buildings, neither does Kenya. So we're very intent on it's an existing building that already has patronage. Buildings have spirits and souls, so you don't have to create a new one, you just need to kind of tweak the one that's there. And then have people use it. There are places that don't have libraries. One of our exciting new projects now is a space that is in a very densely populated part of Nairobi, but because of the kind of library that's required there for older people, there's nothing that exists, then we're going to build a new one. But whether there's an infrastructure or whether there's a building that we can convert, then we will do that. But today I've seen some really beautiful brand new libraries, and I was like, oh, it would be nice. It would be nice for like the ventilation and all of the air control. I'm like, oh, that would be so nice to have. But honestly, in a city like Nairobi, I don't think it's what we need first.
Hi, my name is Charles Riley. I'm a catalog librarian for African languages here at Yale. I do have a couple of pointers maybe on just demystifying the cataloging system. You mentioned that there's only one code for African languages. That sounds like the Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah.
The Library of Congress has a presence in Nairobi with a field office, and they have an alternate system that might not be the best to migrate to if you're talking about an established collection, but for new libraries going forward, there are individual classification codes for the individual African languages. You still have a challenge when it comes to the fixed fields in the marker here, and let me know if I'm getting too deep here.
Inside library,
yeah.
you know.
But there are options with the 041 field to use metadata from the ISO 639-3 code, which is a more granular list of 7,000 languages.
Thank you. This is the Library of Congress?
Library of Congress.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
See where you need to come up with libraries more often.
Thank you very much. This was great. I'm very interested in the public programming that is done, particularly in the films. So could you talk a little bit about how those choices are made and how you do outreach to people to let them know about all of your events?
So we have a wonderful program for the events manager. And for the film specifically, if there's an African film that's come out, we want to show it in the libraries first, because the way that Nairobi is designed now, the highways really determine what you get. So if you live on the north and south part of the city, then you have all of the shopping malls, and all of the cinemas, and everything. You're getting things as quickly as Amazon can get them to you. But if you cross the highway and you live in the Eastlands, then that is a completely different story. So, and specifically with blockbusters, like with a Kenyan film that came out last year, we went to the filmmaker and said, hey, we want to screen this at Eastlands, we'll pay the screening rights, we'll do everything. And they're like, oh, you haven't really finished the commercial thing, and we want to do the community thing, and even if you're paying. And that really pisses me off, because then you're saying that you have to cross the highway to kind of access what the rest of us can in Westlands and Eastlands. So if we try and get African films first, both new and archival ones, and we have a long wish list and we keep adding to it. And then sometimes, because we know our communities, well, Netflix is a thing everywhere, in our communities where we work, it's not. So sometimes we just want to watch the show that's hot on Netflix this month, and we'll screen that as well. And then we take a lot of requests. So every time you walk into the library, when you check in, there's a question about what do you want to see, what do you want to access, what do you want, and every month we look through what people's requests are. And then we kind of have a thing for this we can do next week, this needs 3 months, this needs a year, and we just try and work our way down that list. It's quite irritating, because your years never look the same, so you're never doing the same thing every year, because you're always adjusting for need. But there's some programs that have remained core. Our music program, most of our children's programs. So we have Music Bank, Dance Bank, Art Bank, Theatre Bank, film and photography, and those are mainstays. And it's what you do with them that changes. So sometimes with dance, we'll do maybe 0 to 4-year-olds this year and focus on that, and then move to another group and have those kids who did dance this year do art the next year. Because I'm a writer and I want to see writers, artists, musicians coming out of Eastlands every day, and I think this is how we begin to show them that there's alternative careers out there. I have a lot of friends who are musicians who complain that if there's 4 musicians having a gig in Nairobi, all of the instrumentalists, there are no drummers in Nairobi, that you have to do a backing track event. And that wasn't the case when I was growing up. It was a live show every single night in Nairobi. Artists were making money, and that's because there's been no intentional arts education. For 20 years in the curriculum, there was no arts education. I'm like, are we just trying out robots now? What's happening? And that's how we make some of these decisions, but also we pay attention a lot to what people need. And then for others programs, it's just solutions. I'm like, we look at what people are browsing on the internet. YouTube is maybe 4th or 5th. It's all job searches. It's all, how do I tailor my CV? How do I find a job? How do I get over a nurse when I'm getting interviewed? That tells us what people need. So then we bring in recruiters to help people get ready for the job market. So sometimes not even about asking people, it's just watching what they do. Watching even how quickly we refill water dispensers will tell you what's happening in the communities. Right? You just have to really be intent on solving problems to see all the information, because want to meet with dignity, people would always tell you what they're struggling with. They want to tell you their problems when you're a stranger, but you just watch where they gravitate to first, and it'll tell you what they're struggling with.
So Archer works in the Yale Film Archive, if you all want to talk later.
Oh. Okay, so film, Library of Congress, together.
Hello, thank you so much again for this amazing program. Can you speak a little bit about the way you fund your work and the way you interact with funders? My former life as a funder. But I'm interested in sort of how you're piecing that together outside of what you've already said.
Yeah, that's a good question. So currently, about 90% of our money comes from grant. The reason I'm not writing books is I'm always writing grant proposals. The other 5% is individual. So to be on our board, you have a give-get every year. Either give us the money or find somebody who can. And it's either $10,000, it goes up every year. $10,000, it goes up every year incrementally. And then the other 5% is earned revenue. So our gala, our Airbnb tours, we sell merchandise. We digitize collections for people. We do anything we're doing for the libraries, we try and do commercially. I must say that strand we haven't done well. And this year we put together a board to diversify our fundraising. We will not survive if we keep relying on grant. I mean, we've seen what's happened this year. And we knew this 2 years ago. We kept saying we need to build an endowment, we need to do earned revenue, we need to figure out a kind of crowdfunding, something. And we haven't done any of that because we've been very lucky to have consistent and renewable grants. The British Council have been our largest consistent funder. We had a huge grant from the World Book Capital in Sharjah. That's what funded the construction of our work and programming for 2 years. So we've been very lucky. But the only way to protect these spaces is to diversify how we fundraise for them. So right now, commercialization is top of my kind of priority. I want the libraries to be full every day. I want every seat to be sat on 3 or 4 times, but not everybody sits on it has to pay for the space. If 2 people can pay, they can pay for the next 3 people. So trying to figure out how to tap into the rich Kenyans who can pay for things so that the people who can't have access to it. And it's a model that's happening all over the world, but not so much on the continent. So we really want to learn how to do that. We're building an endowment and raising money for it now. And then trying to monetize whatever we can. We have successfully held Nairobi's most glamorous event at the library. So I was like, maybe we do this events thing well, and maybe we should be doing that for other people. At this stage, we will do whatever we can to make sure that the work can continue sustainably, including really auditing what we're doing and saying, okay, we do a lot, but do we have to do everything? Because in the funding climate, we all have to be realistic, and sometimes it means killing your darlings. Our music program is one of my favorite ones, but also one of our most expensive ones. Musical instruments cost a lot of money, and you're trying to provide access to them in a way that the children can actually become instrumentalists. You have to take them home with them, and I was like, how many cellos can we buy for the kids to take home? It's just not practical, and unfortunately, that's where we're at now. And my co-founder hates what I say this, but I'm just like, we have to protect these spaces with profit. It's the only way, and it's just that it sucks, but I think that it's a really good way to just make sure that they're around for another 90 years.
So this has been amazing. I just want to throw out maybe consulting with other. That sounds like something that could maybe make some money. Yeah. So one last thing before we close out. You have listed a lot of different things that you want to do, and you are doing many different things. But I still want to know, like, what's the dream? Like, when you look at, if this happens, I'll be able to just stop.
You know what? Because of our board, now I have an answer to that. I used to say my dream is libraries everywhere, which still is, but my dream is libraries everywhere that are publicly funded, so that Book Bunk doesn't have to exist anymore. We really think that, in our case, government doesn't always know what to do with these spaces, so we're like, we will show you, and then when we show you, you have to do it. That's where we're at right now. So I'd love to see libraries everywhere. I think that cities that are rich that have an abundance of libraries just have a richness to them, and you know this. I also always visit a library when I travel. But more importantly is that there's only so many people who dedicate their lives to the work that what we do, and I don't want the work Book Bunk does to be over when I'm done with it. I want it to continue beyond me, and that's a factor of the team that we have in place and succession, but also the government doing its job and funding these spaces, or fund the people, give us the money, then if you know what to do, give us and we'll show you what to do with it. And that's the goal, and I think that's not impossible to attain. I just wanted to say that you may have received postcards on your seat, which is, we have a set of 13 that tell the story of Book Bunk in 13 postcards. So you can pick up the whole set if you'd like to. I have a few copies here of the entire set, but if there's anybody you know who would love to hear about us, please mail those cards to them, or fill in the address and give it back to me and I'll mail it to them. It's one of the ways we found to get our word out and to also just tell our story in a cool, handy way. So, little gifts for you.
Thank you, Wanjiru. Can we please give a round of applause? Thank you all for coming. I'm going to hand it over to Michaela.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here, for spending your afternoon here with us. We hope you enjoyed this discussion and you're willing to continue the discussion over some delicious refreshments in the next room. So please join me once again in thanking our amazing speaker, Wanjiru Koinange, and our moderator for the day, Sandra.
That was one of those aerosols.